Welcome to my Full Life and Faith Leaps podcast with me, Tiffany Jo Baker, where we help you experience God's power and rest in your purpose and progress as you move forward step by step in all the things God has called and created you to do at home and around the world. Hello, y'all, and welcome back to my Full Life and Faith Leaps podcast with me, Tiffany Jo Baker. Today, we're going to be talking about exposing the lies that can hold our identity and our impact back. And today, I have with me a dear, sweet new friend, Kelly Thompson. Y'all just going to love her. I've been able to collaborate with her on a couple things here recently. We just had a conversation for her podcast. She is a like-minded entrepreneur, mom, author, and coach. Y'all, she focuses on messaging and visibility for those of you who need to get your message and your mission out there. She is the host of the Genius in You podcast. And here's what her podcast does. I love this. That she talks to ordinary moms doing incredible things in business and life. Kelly,
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tiffany. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I so appreciate you being willing to come on and share a little bit about your journey and about, a pivotal time in your life. You mentioned it as we've been talking back and forth, but there was a time in your life when I think it was your oldest got engaged. You lost your dad. And you had this moment of identity awareness of about to lose your identity, kids growing up, about to be launched into the world. And you were reflecting on who you were, who God called you to be. Can you tell us a little bit about that space and what that was like?
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably one of the hardest times in my life, to be honest. And it was like you mentioned, my oldest daughter had gotten engaged, and which you expect that your kids are going to grow up and leave. That's a thing. But still, I think, as a homeschool mom in particular, pretty much my identity was very much wrapped in to what they were doing. My friends were the friends of theirs parents, and we did all the things together, Monday through Friday, always together doing all the things. And so, and my daughter was also very active in soccer. And so that consumed an enormous amount of my time, right? And I have 3 other children as well. But as the oldest, it just kind of was something that I knew was coming, but didn't expect, I guess. And so during that time in my life, it was, I was excited that she was getting engaged or that she was getting married, but it was grief filled, to be honest, And I think that's something that not a lot of moms talk about, because at least not in the circles that I knew, you know what I mean? I think there's value in getting mentorship or connecting with moms that are a little bit older than you, so you can understand the path that's kind of coming ahead of you. And I really didn't have that, but now in retrospect, I can look at that and see 100% the value in that, because I don't believe that I really understood what it was going to mean when a child leaves the nest. Now, like I said, I'm not an empty nester. I still do have, 3 other children. My youngest is 13, but it was really a realization for me that life is going to keep on going. And I was really, the identity that I had was very much wrapped in my kids. And I was just kind of going through the motions, if you understand what I'm saying. I didn't really put a lot of intentional thought into what I should be doing per se as a person. As a mom, you bet I did. As, the parent of these children that God gifted me, 100%. But in terms of what I really felt and knew that he called me to, that not so much. I know that my husband and I were called to foster and adopt, and that's what we did. But I didn't really pay much attention beyond that in terms of my intentionality of my life. So I'm at this point where, it was like this bucket list trip, and my family and I and my mom and my daughter and her then boyfriend, we all traveled to California. And he gets on one knee. It was our bucket list trip. We'd never been to the West Coast. We live in Florida. travel all the way over there. He's, we go up this mountain, beautiful mountain or whatever. And we get up there, beautiful scenery. He gets on one knee and he proposes and everyone's clapping. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like we knew he was going to do that because he had texted me, I'm going to do it here. We knew he had asked our permission and all that stuff. But when he did it, we were like, oh my gosh, it's so exciting. And it was exciting. But then when I got home, we left California, got home, it was really like, what does that mean for me? Like, what does that mean? And then shortly after that, my father died. Now, my dad was always my cheerleader. He was the one that pretty much no matter what I did, he was always going to be like, that's great, honey. That's amazing. But he still would give me like a little doses of reality. But he was kind of my support system when I was going to school. For example, I was working on a doctorate in psychology. I have a master's in psych and I was working on a doctorate in psychology. And I said, you know what, Dad, I don't think I'm doing this. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I was in my second year. Like, I was close to being done, but I was like, not feeling it anymore. And he was like, well, if that's what you want to do, then I support you. Whereas everyone else was like, are you crazy? What are you talking about? You're like almost there. Keep going. Right. So he was that kind of dad. And so he did have some, some challenges, like some lung issues or whatever that, had been diagnosed. So we knew there was some stuff. He'd already said that he wasn't going to be able to attend the wedding because he lived in another state. So we kind of knew that. But still, when I got the call that he was hospitalized, it was a devastating blow because after I flew up there immediately and I knew that this was going to be the last place that I saw him. And that was really, really hard. So couple that with, our oldest daughter moving.
Yeah.
And then, my dad dying. And I had just started this business not too long before, maybe like a year or so before then. And so it wasn't really getting a whole lot of traction per se anyway. Like I was just kind of still figuring it all out. Just what am I really doing? You know what I mean? Like when you're just figuring out. And that's what I was doing. I just figured, okay, let me dabble in something. So when this happened, it really kind of made me reflect and kind of decide, what am I doing? Who am I going to be?
Yeah.
And society tells you, as a woman especially, there are so many different roles that society will thrust upon you, right? Like you're a mom and you should only be a mom. Oh no, you're a career woman and you can have it all. No, you are ugly, you are short, you are pretty, you are fat, you are black, you are white, there are all these different labels that we get accustomed to. And I think that the challenge becomes when we finally wake up, if we finally wake up and recognize that these labels don't necessarily come from God.
Right.
And understanding that he has a plan for us beyond who we think we are in this life. Like he designed us and created us to do certain things. And I think we get so hung up on the labels that we attach to ourselves and that others attach to us, that we don't stop and take the time to really figure out what that means. And that was certainly my situation. I really didn't think about what else could I be called for. It was just kind of like this. God says, you're going to be married. Okay. Married my husband. All right. You're going to be a parent. You're going to be a mother of children. Okay. Boom. No, now you're going to, foster a job. Okay. But there wasn't any like deliberate seeking, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense. And at that moment, those moments, it was like a year when that happened, I really started reflecting. It was almost like God said, okay, those moments when things happen and it really does force you to pay attention to certain things.
Yeah.
It was one of those things for me that happened.
Yeah, so good. I mean, it was like this perfect storm of coming together of time and space and people. And I love so much of what you said, and the who of, as you're reflecting of who you were called to be, who you are, and talking about identity and the labels that are put on us, that a lot of the times, if you really put the Bible down to basic terms, it is a war against our identity on who we are and whose we are.
Yes.
And so it's constant struggle of Satan trying to rob us in the area of identity. And we see that so much in our world today, of people's identity and who they've been created to be, has been um, I mean, that's the main fight right now. And
100%.
you were at this like pivotal moment of being able to be so reflective of like, yeah, who am I? What is this? So, you had left a job and to pursue this entrepreneurship and coaching and setting, forward thinking enough to be like, I know this stage of life is coming. I know the kids are growing up. And so you're walking out this process. Were there any labels, not just labels, but I would say any lies? A lot of times Satan will try to stick us. A lot of times it starts in our childhood, before the age of 6, with some kind of core lie or lie about ourselves that he kind of pings throughout our life. Um, I'll give an example. The core lie that I dealt with was I'm not enough.
Mm,
And that started all the way back when I asked the Lord, okay, where did this start? Because Satan's pinged it throughout my life.
right.
But it started in kindergarten. And it
Mm,
started with, and Satan's so crafty, he can even start it with a positive moment or a neutral moment or a traumatic moment. It doesn't matter.
right.
He can twist all of it. But I was at a private Christian school, and we had reading, not competitions, but it was S S essay. I forget what it was called, but basically we would read a book and we
Hmm.
would color it in, and then we'd see how far we got to in this whole reading. So this is kindergarten,
Hmm.
reading books. And my mom would come in, parents would come in, and we'd read to them, we'd get to color it. Well, at the end of the year, the winner read 122 books and I read 121 books. And
Mm.
Satan's like, you're not enough.
See, not there, not
You
enough.
didn't just you that what you didn't just one more. Like you couldn't just do one more. You had a whole
Mm.
year. Like you couldn't
Mm.
just do one more, two more.
Yeah, right.
Um, so that was a lie that I've had to recognize and overcome, um, with the help of Jesus and taking that from me. Was there any kind of lies in this process that Satan brought up to try to keep you from walking this out?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So many things I want to touch on of what you're saying. First, I want to say that it definitely is in our society today a war against our identity. Like you see it in the various communities
Mhm.
that are kind of sprouting up with different belief systems and things like that. So 100% is a war against our identity and the identity of our children as well and what they're being exposed to. So it's huge. It's a really, really big deal. And as far as the lies that we buy into, I always say that, the enemy, his goal is to rob you of your legacy.
Mm,
And the way that that's accomplished is by denying you of your God-given identity.
mm,
Right now, if you are not someone who's in the word, you don't know what your identity is.
right.
You're believing whatever you see out in the world. Like, okay, well, they say I'm this, I must be that. And so I think one, in order to combat that, and we haven't talked about that part, but to combat that, huge, number one, you have to read your Bible. You have to know your Bible.
Yep.
You have to, right? But then as far as like lies that I believed, it would be the exact one that you mentioned. And I find it so interesting. And I want to say it's probably more common than not. If you're listening to us, you're probably thinking, oh, that's mine too, because I think that
Mhm.
happens to
Mhm.
most women. In fact, I was literally on a client call last night, and the woman, one of her core issues that she wants to help her clients because she struggled with this,
Mhm.
because her offer is really about helping women grow through infidelity.
Mhm.
And one of her thoughts was that she didn't feel enough. Like when this was happening in her life, she did not feel enough. And so she wants to help these women
Mhm.
understand it has nothing to do with them not being enough. So I think that
Yeah.
is one of those core messages that we have as women, because there's, you look on TV and society says, oh my goodness, no, this is the perfect woman.
Yeah.
And if you don't meet that criteria, then of course you're going to be thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm not enough." And for me, that lie started way back before, any of this was going on in my life.
Mhm.
For me, I can remember a pivotal moment too. I was going to a Catholic school,
Mhm.
and I was one of maybe three women of color. in the room, girls of color in the room. And I remember when the teacher was talking, he was talking to all of the little girls there. And I remember him saying something to the little girls that didn't include me. I don't even remember what was said, but I vividly remember feeling, oh, I don't look like them. I'm not enough.
Mhm.
That's the seed. And I feel like that seed has kind of played out in my life in various ways forever. And I would really love to say that I that doesn't bother me anymore.
Mhm.
I can say that I know who I am in Christ. I
Mhm.
can 100% say that. I can say that I'm confident in who I am and what I do. Excuse me. 100% I can say that. But I cannot say that I never hear that enemy voice in my head at times. And I think, no matter where you get in life, you probably, if you were trying to grow, right? And as an entrepreneur, there's growth around every stinking corner. You know what I mean?
That's true.
There's always something you need to do, something you need
Yeah.
to, someone you need, there's always something, right?
Mhm.
And I think as we kind of seek to grow, and I think this journey, entrepreneurship, is a journey of growth. You learn more about yourself than you do about business, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
as you go through it, this journey, and you get to understand yourself more, I can't say there aren't moments. They
Mhm.
are fewer and farther between, I can say that. But I
Mhm.
can't say there aren't those moments when I think, who are you? Like,
Mhm.
are you real? Do you really know what you're talking about?
Mhm.
Right? And you do. And so one side of you is like, 100% I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And you can tell yourself the results like, oh, are you kidding me? I helped so-and-so and I helped this and I helped this. And I've always been the go-to person for this. And
Mhm.
you can say all that in your rational, logical mind. But then emotionally, you doubt yourself and you wonder. And
Mhm.
then that logic has to shut that emotion down and go, stop it.
Mhm.
You know what you're talking about. Like,
Mhm.
so there, I think what happens is there's a maturity a point of maturity where you get to where you don't believe
Yeah.
the lies anymore. Not that you don't hear them still, but
Mhm.
that you don't believe that, because in our society, we are bombarded with these messages
Yeah.
all the time. You can't get away from them.
Yeah.
Social media, they're on your phone. Literally, the enemy is in your pocket. You know what I mean? The enemy is in your pocket. Turn on TV, and we don't even watch that much TV, but it is in every single show,
Mhm.
every situation. You walk outside, we are bombarded with so many messages, and they're all designed by the enemy to get us to think that we're less than, not enough. And
Yeah.
so when you understand, one, that the truth is in the word, and there
Mhm.
is no other truth. That is the only truth. Once you recognize that, number one, you can take your identity from that. But
Mhm.
then also, you get to a point in your life where you're mature enough to recognize that that is the enemy talking, and that is not you. Your
Mhm.
identity comes from Christ.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. And I think I love all that. And I think at some point along the way, there has to be some type of healing that's done so that you don't listen to that voice. So
yeah,
Satan still pings and tries, like, hey, will this tactic still work? Will it still
right.
work? Are you vulnerable right now? I'm going to
Hmm.
try. But when we've come to a place of healing to where we're operating no longer from a wound, but a scar,
I
from
love
those
that.
circumstances and from those things, his tactics are no longer effective, and we can quicker choose what we're going to do with that voice and quicker identify what that attack and assignment in that voice is. But I do think we have to go through a process of healing of some type to where that no longer hits a sweet spot that he can take us down with it any longer.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely agree with that. And I love what you said, that operating from a scar, not a wound. I
Mhm.
think that's important. And during the time where I was kind of struggling and dealing with all of the things that was kind of going on in my life, and we changed churches as well. So that was yet another thing at
Big one,
that
yeah.
time. Yeah. And so I think for me, the healing came with time,
Mhm.
first of all. And then because I was always in the Bible, like I'd always be in the Bible. That was kind of I would go to that. Sometimes more frequently than others. I'm not perfect by any means. I'm not going to say that every single morning I'm in my word, like without fail. Stuff happens, right?
Sure.
But I was always pretty consistent about that and knowing where my help came from,
Mhm.
right? And so I was pretty consistent about that. But I think over time, I started to put more stock in what he said about me
Mhm.
than what anyone else said about me.
Mm. That, yeah,
And I
that goes
think,
back to your identity on
yes,
whose you were and who you were created.
yeah. And so it was this whole kind of pivotal thing where, my circumstances met my belief system, and then I had to choose.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think we all go through that.
Yeah.
If you allow that situation to kind of naturally occur, we're always going to be presented with some obstacle. I mean, that's just life. And
Mm-hmm.
so it really then is up to you to decide how you are going to handle this. Are you going to head down,
Mm-hmm.
face in the sand? I don't want to look at anything. I'm just going to keep doing exactly what I'm doing. Or am I going to recognize perhaps a still small voice inside of the madness?
Yeah.
Right? What is that still small voice saying? Like, and for me, I felt that still small voice was saying, I've got you. I've got you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a plan. And it's not your plan. Like I have always operated, I've always been very capable in life, right? And so I've always kind of operated with the mindset of, I can do all things through Kelly who strengthens Kelly. You know what I mean? Like I can do it, I can do it. And when you think that way, what I've come to learn is you do not leave room for God to work
Mm.
because you're like, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. As
Yes.
opposed to, right? As
Yes.
opposed to, I'm not sure what I should be doing here. Let
Yeah.
me take a moment. Let me take a breath. Let
Mhm.
me listen for what God wants for me, right? And I feel like that realization alone has helped me to move past my labels and to
Mhm.
step into what God has really called me to do, which is to help and serve
Mhm.
women who have their own God-given gift,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
help them to create these offers that honor him ultimately. So
So good. The Lord remind me of the verse, John 10:27. My sheep hear my voice,
yes.
and I know them, and they follow me.
Yeah.
By being in the word, we get to know the good shepherd, and
Mm,
we get to know his voice, and he gets to know us. And it's this relationship, and out of his presence can come that healing. Comes
yes.
that healing throughout that time, continually. Oh, we could probably talk all day about this.
Right.
Um, Kelly, thank you so, so much. Just sharing a little bit about your journey of transition, entrepreneurship, of what you do to help women and use their God giftings and get it out there, and how you walk through exposing the lies. And so that you could know your identity and even have more impact. So where can people find you if they want to know more?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I hang out on Instagram the most. You can find me at Kelly Thompson and Co. And I would love for you to DM me if this episode resonated with you.
So, so good. All right, y'all. Well, thank you for joining us here on My Full Life and Faith Leaps, where we help you get free, live full, and thank God. See you next time. Well, friends, thank you for joining us today on My Full Life and Faith Leaps podcast. If you enjoyed our time together and are taking away a nugget that has inspired your soul and success, would you share this episode with a loved one who could use it too? And if you haven't already, take a moment to rate and review this podcast and help me help others fuel and fulfill their faith journeys. Until next time, I'm Tiffany Jo Baker, a 3-time surrogate, speaker, and strategizer who loves to help you birth your God-given dreams at home and around the world. Now go do all the things God has called and created you to do with the grace and gifts God has given you.